We're coming to you via Zoom, so be patient as we work through this tonight. For quorum presence, we got Mr. Cooper, Mr. Deach, Mr. Holt, myself, Mr. Costello, and Mr. Durbin at this time, and anyone else that might clue in later. So we have enough for a quorum. And first of all, we'll start off with our public hearings. And if Mr. Graville is there, we'd like to start off with the best box storage ZC zone change request -63.
Can't hear you, Chris.
Cannot hear me?
Now we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So as a preliminary matter for this public hearing, I would offer the public hearing notice published in the Warren County Record for tonight's public hearing into the public record. Copy of the ordinances of the city of Warrenton be made a part of the public record by reference. A copy of the comprehensive land use plan be made a part of the public record by reference. And a copy of the planning and zoning report put together by staff be made a part of record by reference. If we could, Melody, if we could pull up the planning and zoning report, that'd be great. Actually, page 3 of the report to the planning and zoning officer. Is that possible, Melody? That's probably good right there. We'll start with that. You have in front of you the best box storage, which is a zoning request, ZC63. This was postponed from the last hearing and removed from the agenda from the last planning and zoning agenda based on some feedback from staff with regards to the developer. This is a request to rezone from N1 to C3, approximately 1.03 acres, 175 feet north of North Service Road on State Highway AA. The request here is to go from M1 to C3, and as you can see, that is the subject site that is set forth in the planning and zoning report. Can we go to the next page, please? Next one. So as you can see right there, surrounding development, the area west of the subject fronting State Highway AA are Zone Z3 Highway Commercial District. Additionally, the parcels to the north and south of the subject site are Zone C3. The parcel to the east is Zone R3 High Density Residential. Staff has reviewed this, and I want to point out one thing with regards to this, and I'm sure the applicant will take the opportunity to explain this. When this project originally came in, it was the self-storage was to go directly on the outer road, North Service Road. After a discussion with staff and working with city staff, they've resubmitted their application to actually set this back and to rezone this parcel to C3 to set this self-storage back. So I know that that's going to be a question and something we discussed previously. Staff has reviewed this, and while the proposal is not consistent with the future land use map of the city, staff is of the opinion that the proposed change in zoning is consistent with the planned policies and the future direction plan of the city. This project, or this part of the comprehensive plan with the multifamily that went in, kind of deviated a little bit from what the future land use plan was that created the inconsistency. Hence the future directions map and the future direction map and the plan policies allow for this flexibility for this type of kind of change in growth, and staff does believe that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan with regards to those concerns. And staff is recommending approval of the rezone request. I'm here to answer any questions that any commissioners may have for the city, and beyond that, I will turn it over to the applicant.
So I have a question, Mr. Bill.
Go ahead, Scott.
So what I'm understanding you to say is that the applicant is offering, or the city has recommended, and the applicant agrees to take the proposed development away from the actual frontage at the service road and the interstate and move it away so that we're not essentially using some of the most valuable high visibility property for something that is not a revenue generator for the community. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think the reason I wanted to talk about this site, and I know the engineer's here to present this project, but if you look, and I wish I could use a pointer on this, but if you look, you have this C3 commercial kind of on this side of AA. And originally the project, when it came in was at the intersection of AA and North Service Road, right where that arrow is, where the proposed self-storage was. Consistent with discussions with planning and zoning and the Board of Aldermen in our recent planning meeting, we had the discussion about preserving that corridor for commercial. And, essentially we told the applicant we would not recommend approval of the rezone or the project because there was an intention to preserve that swath of commercial as it comes across North Service Road. They withdrew their petition and reapplied with that in mind and have now put that front, what is part of the request tonight, which is a subdivision, that front part of the lot will be a commercial development. And they have pushed back the self-storage, so it's out of kind of that. If we had a larger picture, Commissioner Costello, you'd see that it's that kind of it's consistent as it kind of comes down through with that commercial development.
Okay.
And is the engineer there present?
Chris, are you here to speak on this?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just state your name. Just state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Chris Wolf with Wonderlick Surveying and Engineering. I do have a short PowerPoint presentation that I was hoping to give, if that's okay.
That's fine. Go ahead. You got the floor.
All right. Hey, Brandy, can you change that around so I can share the screen?
Don't go all crazy hosting this now, Chris.
All right.
Are you able to share, Chris?
I'm on it right now. Okay. All right. Okay, can everybody see the slide, best box storage?
No. There you go, Chris.
Now you're working.
All right. Everybody hear me and see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good.
So I am on the line as the engineer. One of the owners is also on the line, I believe, Matt, and he can speak on behalf of the development. But I was going to run through this PowerPoint real quick and just kind of give everybody a heads up of what's going on or what we're planning on trying to do here. So this is for the best box storage here in Warrenton. You kind of know where the site's located. And as Chris stated previously, the first thing that was brought up is the rezone. So it's basically there is a 1 acre piece there that sits in between, that's zoned M1, that sits in between two C3 pieces. And the two C3 pieces were just recently rezoned from M1 to C3. I had worked on the development to the east for the Creekside Apartments. And when the developer was developing Creekside Apartments, he ended up purchasing these two pieces that will show up here in a second to the north and south. And the one that on the frontage is the lot that Chris was talking about. The next thing that we're going to try to do is a lot combination. We're going to try to put two lots into one. And then basically we're going to try to do a conditional use permit for a self-storage facility. So as far as the location, you guys know where it's at. As far as AA goes, we're in the southeast corner of the lot combination. It comes out to be 3.5 acres. The existing zoning map, you can see that there's M1 to the north. There is also, then we have a piece of M1 that sits in between, right here between the two C3 pieces. So what we're trying to do is rezone this piece to match the two C3 pieces on each side of it. So that's what that has to do with. This is just a bigger rezone exhibit showing, trying to rezone that M1 piece to C3. That way, then all three pieces would be C3 zoning. Rezone M1 to C3. So, all right, as far as the plat goes, previously, whenever we did the development to the east, Creekside Apartments, this became lot 3. The most northern lot was lot 3 of Creekside Apartments, and this lot down here next to the intersection was lot 1. This piece in the middle was not owned by the developer of Creekside Apartments at the time. So that was a standalone tract, and that's why it didn't get rezoned previously. So what has happened in that time is our clients, Best Box Storage, are planning to acquire these pieces of ground here. Okay, lot 1, lot 3, and this separate tract. So in doing so, we're basically trying to combine the separate tract and lot 3 into one piece. So that would be the plat. So we're basically trying to combine these two pieces into one piece. You guys can kind of see, this is just an aerial view of that for the plat. I mean, there's nothing out there on these lots right now. And like Chris stated initially we were trying to incorporate this future commercial lot into the development as one large lot. And basically from feedback to the city, they were trying to keep this commercial corridor open. So dealing with my clients in the city, we worked out basically a deal that we bring that back and leave that front lot as future commercial. So this is going to stay C3 for future commercial development. And then these back two pieces were going to be combined into, it's still a C3 zoning, but this is where we're planning on doing our conditional use permit. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I do. Go ahead, Dan. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Commissioner.
And this is, you're going to put another storage facility. How much of this is going to cover the storage?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to cover next. I just basically have covered the rezone and then the lot combination. The next thing I will cover is the actual conditional use permit, which would be the storage facility.
Anybody have a question? Anybody else have a question on the zone change at this time?
Commissioner Barton, I do want to point out that, this is, we've talked about, having and really working on implementing our comprehensive land use plan. I know Commissioner Durbin, you've made on repeated occasions comments about preserving that commercial corridor of our best properties for retail for future use. And I think it's important to point out, regardless of if you approve it or disapprove it, for the future, this is what we plan on doing. When you guys set a priority or set a a future land use that says, this is our commercial corridor, we're going to preserve it for commercial, we are going to give them feedback and say, well, you're going to have to move it back because we want to save that for future commercial use. So this is kind of that in action, and us working with the developer to say, well, can you push this back this far so we can preserve this corridor? And I think one of the pictures that you had up there, Chris, really kind of showed how that corridor flowed through. I don't know if you can pull that back up with the land use. I think it was the one before, maybe it was the one before that. That's probably the best one you can see, but you can see that 3.53 acres where the self-storage is now off the outer road. So in front of it will be that commercial that, you know, if you blew that up, you could see it's consistent with the line carrying it down through there.
All right, anyone else have any questions for Mr. Wolf on the zone change at this time during the public hearing? Brandy, Melody, is there anyone there at the site that want to speak?
No, not here.
Okay, no one there then?
I don't have
Hearing no
anyone on
one
Zoom.
else? Okay, no one else on Zoom either. Okay, good. Hearing nothing else, I guess we'll go ahead and move on from that zone, that public hearing, and move on to our next public hearing, which will be the best box storage conditional use permit -72. And we'll turn it back over to Chris first of all, before he turns it over to Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Commissioner Barton. Once again, this is the public hearing for CUP 72, best box storage. As a preliminary matter, I'd ask that the planning and zoning report, staff report be made a part of the record by reference. The comprehensive plan be made a part of the record by reference. The public hearing notice published in the Warren County Record for tonight's public hearing be made a part of the record by reference. Copy of the ordinances of the city of Warrenton be made a part of the record by reference, and the comprehensive land use plan be made a part of the record by reference. This is a conditional use permit for the 3.53 combined acre lot combined for the self-storage. Bo Reinberg has submitted an application for a CUP for a 3.5 acre tract of land located at the intersection of North Service Road and Highway AA. The request has been submitted concurrently with the request to rezone the 1 acre that we just had the public hearing on. As discussed in the staff report and previously in the public hearing, the future land use plan designates this parcel as industrial. However, the flexibility built into the comprehensive plan and some of the changes in development over the last couple of years does provide the flexibility, and it is consistent with the comprehensive plan that this be rezoned to C3. The conditions set forth in section 405.340G have been laid out in the planning and zoning officer's report that they do comply with that. Staff has reviewed the proposed conditional use permit and recommends approval of the request with the following conditions. All utilities serving the site shall be installed underground in accordance with section 410.210 A11. An irrigation system shall be provided along State Highway AA as required by section 405.265 F5. Architectural elevations shall be provided clearly detailing building heights, and all lighting shall be arranged in such a manner as to direct the light away from neighboring residential properties and away from the vision of passing motorists. I have nothing further, Commissioner Barton.
Very good, Mr. Graville. Mr. Wolf, or who's going to take over this section?
All right, I'll go ahead and
Okay.
kind of go through this conditional use plan. Basically, I have the plan in front of you. Can you guys see that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, when Chris alluded to, we initially were going to include this future commercial lot as part of the best box storage. And then after talking to the city and getting their preliminary comments back on the last plan, we went ahead and moved and took all our storage units out of here and just have our storage facility on this proposed lot here. What you can see in yellow, when you first come in off your the entrance that we have off AA, That entrance was submitted to MoDOT and they approved that entrance location. When you first come in, there will be 5 parking spaces and a office facility right here. And then we'll have the actual gate right past the office. So the office will be outside the gate. And then these yellow boxes, it's probably hard to see on your screens being that it's small, but those yellow boxes are the actual storage buildings themselves. Excuse me. And what you can see is what we're trying to do here is we do have a larger building right here off the bat. And one of the things that this storage company tries to do is they try to have a little bit larger units to try to help not just individuals to store their equipment, but also some of these smaller self-start companies that are working out of their home initially, and they grow a little bit too big for that. Sometimes they need ability to have a storage facility where they can get their equipment in and out for a temporary site. So with that being the case.
Hang on, Mr. Wolf.
Okay.
Mr. Graville, can you mute your thing, Mitter?
Sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
So basically kind of what you're seeing here, this is our front building. That building there in the front is actually, the doors are going to face to the north. All right. And we do show some plantings along the south side here. So you will actually have tree plantings with shrubs and trees on the back side of this building. The whole property will be fenced with a black chain link type fence. You can see the pavement and the traffic flow that they will go around these facilities with. The lighting is going to be, mounted on the buildings themselves, facing in between the 2 buildings. We do have one proposed street light, and that would be out here towards the entrance by the gate. We tried to leave as much green. We do have a green strip buffer here on the north side, and we're trying to keep as many trees over here on the east side. And what you can't really see on this plan is this is where that larger ditch runs through here on the east side. So there is a strip of trees in here that is not owned by this lot. It's actually owned by the developer over here of Creekside Apartments. But there is still going to be a tree buffer in here that is not owned by this lot, but it will remain there. This developer of Creekside, like I said, we had done the work for him before, and he has no intention of coming across to take the trees down for no reason. It doesn't serve him any purpose to take them down. So those trees are going to remain, and we're going to try to plant some additional trees along here and over here on the east side and also the west side. Now, one of the comments that Chris brought up before was all the utilities be put underground as one of the conditions. I don't see that being a problem. The irrigation system along AA, Matt's on the line, which is Bo's partner, and they agreed to put the irrigation system along AA earlier, and he can speak on that part. And as far as all the other conditions that went along with that, I'll try to get through those also in this presentation. So that is the basic layout there. One other thing that came up was stormwater detention. So this slide is trying to show what we're planning for stormwater detention. What's going on is we did this development at Creekside Apartments. And when we were doing that, the developer that owned Creekside Apartments owned this lot up here and this lot over here. All right. And he was in communication with the person that owned this lot. So whenever we designed this development, we oversized this detention basin on Creekside Apartments to take into account all the detention requirements for these lots right here. Okay. With that being the case, whenever Best Box approached the owner of Creekside Apartments to develop these 3 lots, it was basically an agreement between the two that the detention was already taken care of on Creekside Apartments for these lots. So that's one of the comments that came up, not having its own detention basin. And the explanation for that, I'm trying to go through is that, it was already taken into account in this development. So that's kind of the deal was worked out. Typically, and Chris, you can speak on behalf of this also, but as far as the engineering of this goes, typically we would rather do a larger basin, one single larger basin, than try to put in a couple smaller basins. And as far as the engineering goes along with this, the biggest reason is that it's the maintenance. And when I say the maintenance of these smaller basins, typically whenever you're running stormwater, you catch your stormwater rain runoff and it runs into the basin, okay? And then you meter it out. You meter it out through a structure, a concrete structure, typically with holes in it. And the smaller basin is usually the smaller amount of water that runs into it. And it's the smaller holes that you have to have in your structure to let the water back out. The smaller the holes that you have in the structure basically protects the people downstream, but they have a better chance of clogging. So typically what you rather see is a larger basin where you can actually control the flow better, but the orifices on your structure don't get so small that they clog. So, I mean, that's one of the other reasons why we would like to have one larger basin than having a smaller basin within this development.
If I can, I want to address the basin for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Preliminary stormwater design indicates stormwater will be handled through an off-site regional detention basin. Section 403.050A1 does not permit off-site detention without a variance from the Board of Aldermen. Information justifying this need has been presented tonight. You all can consider a recommendation with regards to the off-site detention basin. If you recommend and the board ultimately provides that off-site detention basin variance, a contribution to the stormwater management improvement fund will be required in accordance with section 430.050. The other thing I wanted to point out, the Creekside Apartments was done as a planned district. One of the conditions of the planned district was preservation of that western part of the ditch. So if the owner wanted to try to do development where those trees are that Chris referenced earlier, it would be a violation of the planned district that he's got right there. So that is preserved as part of the Creekside Development Planned District. So this is a lot like sidewalks, Planning and Zoning Commission. In a lot of ways, but different, obviously, because it's stormwater. I know that's one of the top concerns for Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Aldermen. In that it's like sidewalks, in that if there are practical difficulties or hardships or unnecessarily requiring the detention basin, that can be, you can recommend allowing them the off-site detention basin with the contribution of the Stormwater Management Fund. We will also require, obviously, the engineering to show that it can handle the flow, which I'm sure Chris can or probably already provided. And the engineering, and there will have to be a cross-access stormwater easement and a cross-maintenance agreement approved by the city if you all recommend approval of the off-site detention basin.
Any questions from the commissioners? No questions this time from any of the commissioners?
I'd like to make that stormwater detention pond is big enough for that to handle it. It just doesn't look like, from what I'm looking at, that it's going to handle all of that water from both places.
And I can address that, and we will provide we provided a stormwater detention report for Creekside Apartments and submitted to the city. And we will provide a stormwater report for that, for our future commercial and Lot A, to prove that that basin is adequate size. I mean, you have to remember that this is what I got here in front of you is it's pretty close to scale, but it's kind of a pretty picture. So it doesn't have all the grading lines and everything showing as far as the basin volume. You know, the water depth in that basin is 5 feet deep. So we're basically cutting off a bunch of water to the east and running it up to that basin and metering it back out to the channel. So we were actually detaining more stormwater than we started out with. And one thing about detention is that it's typically based off of the conditions of the existing ground to start out with. And being that this was an agricultural field, I don't know how much you're familiar with that being a bean field in the past, the Creekside Apartments, and then part of Lot A was actually planted also. And what happens during this time of year, typically after the harvest, the crops come out, it's basically bare dirt in there. And that bare dirt, you know, can only soak up so much water until it starts raining, or you get a frost, the ground freezes and then it starts raining. A lot of that water runs off directly. So typically if you're going from a situation where you have a dirt exposed bean field to woods, grass, pavement, you can imagine the difference between grass and pavement is greater than the difference between a bare dirt bean field and pavement. So that's one of the things that gets taken into consideration on the design aspect of how much additional rainwater we have to detain. I don't know if that's I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but that's part of the detention requirements.
Chris,
To
can
me,
you
it
speak?
makes, go ahead, Chris.
It says 1,200 feet of wooded channel. Is that, are you piping that stormwater from Lot A, or how is that being carried over to the detention basin?
No, so basically what happens is, it's a good question, Chris. The 1,200 feet, it starts up here all the way at the box culvert right next to the outer road. So the 1,200 feet is just kind of delineation of where the bigger ditch flows right now, okay? So what happens with this development is that our proposed development, what will happen is we will put storm sewer structures, and you can kind of see one here. It's not a full design at this point, but we're going to catch our stormwater and actually pipe it down here into this larger channel, okay? So the water from our site goes directly into the channel. So how that typically works as far as detention goes is that over here on this east side, we got water running towards us, and we also have this water here in the frontage. We're catching all this water here and piping it into our basin. So what happens is the water coming from this east side is going to sit in this basin and not get piped into this channel. So basically it's called offsite detention, meaning that this water is allowed to be released by capturing water over here and not letting it be released at the same rate. So by the time you get to this point in the channel, then you are actually going to be at a net zero or a decrease in flow in the channel. So what happens is this site is allowed to be released. This site over detains. So this water doesn't get released. It gets put in the basin and then it's released slowly to compensate for this site over here being released.
That makes sense to me, and I'm not an engineer, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn once. We were really talking about these basins earlier about a month, in the last couple of months and to me, it makes sense to have one good one rather than two not as good or not as durable, or because we've been talking about who takes care of these once these things are put in place. And to me, if the Board of Aldermen gives a variance on this, I mean, that to me, it sounds that's this gentleman's done his homework on that. And but that actually was a good presentation where it made sense to me that you've already caught the water from this lot. You just got to catch the water from the pavement up there to make sure it doesn't overflow that. Yeah.
That's kind of, it seems like basic logic that if you have the larger basin with the larger holes, like you said, we were talking about retention and who does the upkeep. Well, I would think having two small ones that, then it gets clogged and somebody has to go in and take care of it versus one with a larger orifice for drainage. I think it just makes more sense.
Thank you, Mr. Cullum. Anyone else want to speak on behalf of this before we move on? And once again, there's no one there to speak on behalf of this at the office, correct?
No, sir.
All right, let's,
I'd
go
like
ahead.
Uh,
Go ahead, Ms. Cooper.
Sidewalks along Double A. Just in general, I don't know whether it's particularly for this lot or anything, but we're trying to put sidewalks every place. And all of a sudden, I'm looking, driving up Double A today, and there is no sidewalks. Did I mute?
You muted yourself, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, you're muted. I can't tap on you. Mr. Cooper, tap on your mute button. There
Okay,
you go. Now say it.
I thought I was muted before, so.
Yeah, no, you're good now. Go ahead. Talk about your sidewalk situation there.
Yeah, I was driving up Double A today, and there absolutely is no sidewalks along that road. Up there by the hotels or by the senior citizens place or anything. Is there going to be sidewalks along this road?
Yeah, so speaking on behalf of our development plan right now, we're not showing sidewalks along Double A. That was not something that was brought up in any of the comment period. Chris, I don't know if you want to address any sidewalk comments for Double A.
I mean, obviously it's a conditional use permit. So the, planning and zoning can recommend conditions, either sidewalks being installed or sidewalks, a payment into the sidewalk fee or payment in the sidewalk fund in lieu of the sidewalks. I got to be honest with you, I don't know what the safety or grade or the practicality of sidewalks are over there, because it wasn't really a focus of the staff. It was really dealing with the stormwater, the pushing back of the future commercial lot. I don't know, Chris, if you guys are prepared to address that tonight or have any comments about it.
Right now, I mean, the grade along Double A, the roadway itself is not super steep. It actually comes up and then falls back across this development. The grading that we are planning on doing for our development would make sidewalks on our side tough when you get to the northwest corner of the development. As the road exists right now, there's actually a ditch on our side of the road. This being, who knows what's going to happen to this piece to the north in the future, and maybe that would warrant sidewalks at the time that this is developed. I can definitely see that the sidewalk would be extended across this lot in the future. But it seems like the practical purposes of the hotel and I believe it's a senior center. It seems like the sidewalk on the other side of the road would make sense as far as going up and down Double A. If we were going to put it on one side, it seems like that's the side that's going to have more activity than walking through or walking by a self-storage facility. But that would just be my comments for now.
I would agree with that. The other places in the city have much more need for sidewalks as far as safety goes. You don't see many people walking on Double A. There's really no reason to be going up that way. I'm not saying there's never someone, but along I-70 is going to be much more necessary for us to get sidewalks out to the commercial areas out there and to the apartment complex. I mean, if the commission wants to do something about putting money into a site in case they do develop that lot ahead of it, we could.
Chris, I guess my question I would have for you, is there the possibility of adding a easement for a sidewalk along that side, that if the city ever intended to go and put one in there, there would be an easement that would be available?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I could investigate that and see how much room we have to that side. I know we're doing some plantings along the property line. And Double A does have quite a bit of right of way there. We could dedicate an easement, but the roadway width within the right of way there is quite a bit of room between the edge of pavement to the actual property line. So I don't know if that would be sufficient to put a sidewalk in. As far as the city's concerned, if they don't like sidewalks in the right of way and need them on private property, then I think we could still come up with a dedication strip for a future sidewalk if we needed to.
Maybe what we can do, Planning and Zoning Commission, is, you can consider the sidewalks as a condition of the conditional use permit, but I think before we get to the Board of Aldermen, Chris, if you can maybe provide us a detail of what is available, and possibly a recommendation for sidewalks for staff to review, whether they're constructed now or not, what the right of way, I'm sure you have those, and provide us those feedback so we can present that information to the Board of Aldermen.
I think that'd be a proactive way of handling it instead of getting behind the ball on like we did on the North 47 corridor. So this will be a good way of handling it. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, I think definitely we need to plan on a sidewalk. I know that the part where the motel and the
Residential
the
home.
other facility at the end down there, it's very flat over there. It's easy for them to go on that side, but that should be part of the conditions, is there should be some kind of sidewalk put in that area.
Okay. So what am I hearing then? Mr. Graville, what did you interpret from all that?
Well, I think it's, when we take this up in the agenda, I think that's a point of discussion, is sidewalks. We worked with Chris on the Creekside Apartments
Sure.
and on another project, and I know he's very diligent, and as you can
Yes.
see from the slides, is good
Yeah.
at providing, good feedback to the city with regards to the grade, practicality of the sidewalks, the right of way there. I think Planning and Zoning Commission can make their recommendation with regards to sidewalks in whatever direction they want. And I'm sure Chris will provide us some feedback that we can take in front of the Board of Aldermen for them to consider Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and Chris's feedback and staff's recommendation as well.
Sounds good. All right, so we'll bring that back up in the next meeting. Anybody else for the public hearing at this time? Hearing none, we'll close that public hearing.
I just got a couple more slides. If you guys want me to just finish up real quick.
Oh, for the conditional use permit?
Yes.
Okay, because we still got the site plan to go if you want to do it then.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
All
I
right,
can do it then.
all right, let's do it then. Let's go ahead and close the conditional use permit and open up the best box storage site plan -142. And we'll let Mr. Graville start out.
Thank you, Commissioner Barton. This is the public hearing for best box storage. What did I print the wrong? A lot of paper tonight, Chris. This is the public hearing for best box storage, Warrenton SP 142, the site plan. It is submitted by Bo Reinberg. They've submitted, as I stated before, for the best box storage, as was detailed in the rezoning request and also the conditional use permit public hearing request. As a preliminary matter, I'd ask that a notice of public hearing advertised in Warren County Record for tonight be made a part of the public record by reference. Copy of the zoning or copy of the City of Warrenton's municipal code be made a part of record by reference. The comprehensive land use plan be made a part of the record by reference, and also the staff report submitted on December 3rd, 2020 with regards to the site development plan. Staff has analyzed the request for the site plan, and it includes certain requirements that staff believes that have been met. Staff has reviewed the proposed site plan and recommends the following conditions of approval. All utilities, and they're similar to the prior ones, all utilities serving the site shall be installed underground. An irrigation system shall be provided along State Highway AA. Architectural elevation shall be provided clearly detailing building heights, and all lighting shall be arranged in such a manner as to direct the light away from neighboring residential properties and away from the vision of passing motorists. I would also make the comment that if consistent with planning and zoning's practices, if consideration is given for some type of sidewalk easement or sidewalk along Highway AA, that condition be added to both the conditional use permit conditions and the site plan conditions. I have nothing further. I'll turn it over to Chris.
We pretty much covered previously kind of the site plan at the same time as the conditional use plan. So if you guys have any additional questions about that, let me know. I was going to go through the last few slides here, and then I can turn it back over to Brandy and answer any additional questions you guys have. Basically, this is just a photo. I know that the developers will get additional elevation views, but I was just going to try to give you a few quick pictures. This is an office picture of what the office is going to be like. This is just zoomed in on the front door. And then it also has got the kiosk off to the side there. This is one of their other developments. This is not their first development by far. These guys do this quite a bit. So they've had many different experiences in the storage industry, and they build a nice product. And I'll let the owner, Matt or Bo, talk about that. I was just trying to get some additional views. This picture is a little fuzzy, but to just try to give you an idea, some of the visual aspects of it. Going into conclusion, the storage facility conditional use permit, we're basically trying to rezone that one piece from M1 to C3. We're also trying to combine 2 tracts of ground into one. We're trying to keep the natural wood buffer on the east side. We have submitted to fire department and to MoDOT for approvals at this point. And we're trying to keep as much green space, like I'm saying, to the north and to the east. And it is obviously along the creek channel there. So we're not going to get in there and disturb that as little as possible and keep as many trees along that side that's part of our landscape plan. That to try to keep the trees that are there currently. So, and that pretty much sums up my presentation. If you guys got any additional questions, I can answer those. If not, I can turn it back over to Brandy.
All right, thank you, Chris. Very impressive tonight. Appreciate your support and help and all that you're doing in our community. We appreciate that. Commissioners, anybody have any questions for Mr. Wolf before we turn it over to, I guess, the owner of the. Hearing none. Chris is the owner there.
He's not with me, but he should be on the line. I'm going to stop sharing on my end and give it back to Brandy, and then either Bo or Matt can talk.
All right, I see Matt's trying to talk. So Matt, can you state your name for the record and go ahead and talk?
Yeah, so this is Matt Garabaya. I'm at 7328 Flora, Maplewood, Missouri. And thank everybody for their time tonight. Appreciate Chris. I think he did a great job representing our company and what we do. As Chris stated earlier, this is not our first or second or even 5th storage project. We've been developing self-storage for the last 7 years, and we have multiple facilities in St. Louis and one in Washington. And actually my partner Bo is actually up in Montana right now at one of our facilities that we're building there. Chris mentioned something, and I know, one concern was there's a lot of self-storage in Warrenton, and we recognize that and we see that. And we really want to differentiate our product versus the others. And Chris stated earlier, we like to do things a little bit larger when it comes to our format of self-storage. And I think it's important, especially through this pandemic, it's really shown us at all of our facilities, larger units are becoming much more popular and in demand because people are working from home more and more. And what people are doing now is they're running their businesses more out of these facilities. And we want to make sure that we are there to have some of these 15 by 50s, if it's either for RVs, because RV markets have been so popular and people don't like those parked in subdivisions, or if it's even just guys running internet businesses out of these as well. So we want to be there to meet the demand, and we try to do things and we try to dress these up as much as we can. We realize it's still self-storage, but we do take pride in our facilities, and we're excited about coming into the Warrenton market. And I know Mr. Schmeltz has a great development right next door to us, and we're excited to be a part of it.
Thank you, Matt.
And if you guys have any questions for us, Bo, Chris, we're open to any suggestions. I know the sidewalk was a I agree. I do think the sidewalk makes much more sense on the other side of the road, but if there's something, you know, the irrigation and backing off the main highway, you know, we're here to accommodate. We want to make sense. We want it to make sense. We don't want to put a sidewalk to nowhere just to put a sidewalk in.
Right.
And if there is, you know, a fund that we have to contribute to, you know, we understand how it goes. This isn't our first time developing. So like I said, we're open for suggestions.
All right, thank you, Matt. Anyone else on the commission want to talk at this time during the public hearing? And once again, there's no one in the office, Brandy, that wants to talk about it.
Just real quickly, wanted to thank you for the
Oh.
presentation. It was very professional and gave a lot of details. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cullum. Any other comments?
I have nobody on Zoom.
Cool. All right, so hearing that, we're going to close that public hearing and open up our last public hearing for this evening. And that's the Appendix A, permitted and conditional uses, ADM-114 for the amendment there. And to my knowledge, I was just trying a clarification of maybe a numbering was incorrect or something to that extent. Chris, you want to bring us up to speed on that, buddy?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Barton. For our final public hearing tonight, we have ADM 114, approval request for amendments to Appendix A, listing of permitted and conditional uses regarding food services in RC1. This is a staff-initiated request. It was related to a request we received at one point in time in the, I don't know when, with regards to food trucks. And what we discovered when we went through it was, basically what we have here today is recommending amendments to Appendix A to include the following: food service to be included in the RC1 district, which it was not before, and we were surprised by, and made a lot of practical sense to include that in there, and changing the numbers under household living since they were incorrectly numbered. So there's essentially a numerical cleanup and also a realization for the food service that we were, really not allowing the food service to be included in the area, which is the reason we drafted it. So sometimes things get lost in the appendix because it's so long, and when we see the mistakes, we like to bring it back and correct that. For purposes of this public hearing, I'd ask that the public hearing notice be made a part of the record and the ordinances of the city of Warrenton be made a part of the record by reference. So I think you can see right there, food service, walk-in, walk-up restaurants, walk-in restaurants with drive-through and/or drive-through. Originally that was not included. And I think if we go down to the other one, Brandy, I don't know if it was above or below. I think the below is the numbered ones is high. Oh, actually it's up top. I'm sorry, Brandy.
Yeah.
It's at the very
All the way
top.
at the top.
Yeah, right there. Those were misnumbered. There was a numbering issue.
Okay.
So that's all I have from the city of Warrenton and city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Graville. Anyone else want to speak on Appendix A, permitted and conditional uses, ADM-114? Hearing none, we're going to close our public hearings for this evening and open up any public comments. And so Brandy and Melody, do you have anybody with public comment from your neck of the woods?
I do not have any.
I do not either.
Okay, so since there's no public hearings for tonight, we're going to open up our regular planning and zoning commission meeting. First order of business will be our minutes from our last meeting, which was November the 5th, 2020. Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as listed.
Go
Got a
ahead.
motion by Mr. Cullum, second by Mr. Costello to approve the minutes as submitted. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
I abstain. I was absent.
Mr. Deach,
Yes.
Mr. Cullum,
Yes.
Mr. Barton,
Yes.
Mr. Durbin,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Yes.
And Mr. Priest and Mr. Taylor are both absent.
All right, so we had 6 yeses, 2 absent, and 1 abstention, correct?
Correct.
All right, just trying to do my All right, so that passes. Let's go on to the next order of business will be the best box storage zone change 63 that we've been discussing. I'll entertain any more questions or comments, or we'll go straight to a motion on other comments that's made. So
Is there any?
I think, hang on, Scott. Scott, you're muted, buddy.
I got it. Yeah. Sorry, I'll make a motion to approve or recommend approval of the rezone request from M1 to C3 as submitted.
And I
I
second.
will second that.
So we have a motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Deach to approve the zone change 63. Any other questions or comments at this time? We'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mr. Beach,
Yes,
Mr. Cullum,
Yes.
Mr. Barton,
Yes.
Mr. Durbin,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Holt.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 with 2 absent. Let's move on to our next order of business, and that would be the best box storage subdivision -82. All right,
Is R2D2 on the line?
I was gonna say, I don't know. Anybody, Chris, can you,
I thought that was you, Mr. Reville.
I was talking before when I wasn't muted. That was not me speaking in deep.
so this was not in the public hearing, it was just in public comment, and no one had anything on the public comment on the subdivision -82. Is that correct?
Correct. This is for the subdivision of the lot.
It's technically not a subdivision. It's almost a meets and bounds, isn't it?
Yeah, it's technically a boundary adjustment.
Right. Okay. I would make a motion to
This, hang on just a, so just to clarify it for everybody else, this is just where they're saying, now we're gonna take these 2 and bring it back into 1.
Right.
Correct? Yeah, now I'm with you.
I will second
Mr.
the
Costello.
motion that Mr. Costello was getting ready to make.
Yes, my motion is to
But
recommend
I do,
approval.
I apologize, Commissioner. Their staff does have a couple of comments on this lot
Okay.
consolidation or subdivision plat, if I can go through them. I
Go ahead,
lost
Mr.
my- Staff would not, staff has some objections to the preliminary plat, and I'm sure Chris has probably addressed these. The preliminary plat seeks to dissolve the existing lot lines in the parcel to create one 3.53 acre tract of land. The larger site size will accommodate the land area needed for the proposed development of the site submitted in conjunction with the project. Consolidation of the lot does not necessitate extension of public utilities as the site fronts a public street with utilities existing in the area. Preliminary stormwater design indicates stormwater will be handled through an off-site regional detention basin. Once again, to the comments earlier, this is something that is not allowed by code, but a variance is allowed by Board of Aldermen. Planning and Zoning Commission will make a recommendation on that. The preliminary plat also shows removal of the utility easement that runs along the property lines. Sufficient easements are shown on the resulting property to comply with requirements of city code. Staff has reviewed the proposed preliminary plat and found that the proposal is consistent with Chapter 410 subdivision regulations of the Warrenton Municipal Code. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat. I just want to make sure I read that recommendation under the public comments.
Right, thank you, Mr. Graville, for bringing us back up to speed on that one. Go ahead, Mr. Costello, what were you gonna say, sir?
I was going to make a motion to recommend approval of the request to consolidate on the subdivision request.
And I second it as long as there is the noted variance for the drainage basin that was discussed, that we would recommend to go to the Board of Aldermen as well.
Sounds good. Anybody else got any questions or comments at this time? So we're voting on the motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Cullum. on the, to bring it together with the variance sent to the Board of Aldermen for their decision. So any questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Deitch,
Yes.
Mr. Cullum,
Yes.
Mr. Barton,
Yes.
Mr. Durbin,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Costello.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 with 2 absent. And we'll move on down to the conditional use permit -72. And this is the ones where they were talking about the lighting and so forth, the other 3 or 4 conditions that the city had come up with. So I know the last one was lighting.
All right, well, to move things along, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the CUP 72 with the provisions that the conditions for underground utilities, irrigation on Highway AA, architectural elevations to be submitted for approval by the Board of Aldermen, and a lighting plan to be provided to direct lighting away from traffic and other residential occupants.
Are we gonna request a fund to be paid into this sidewalk fund at this, would that go here in a conditional use?
I would recommend that go in both the conditional use and the site plan conditions. We typically make them identical unless there's a variation between.
I did want to ask about that with a sidewalk fund, because thinking about a low traffic area and it's a storage site, I just wanted to make sure that there's positive value when, as Mr. Barton presented sidewalks in the city, that funds or a building could be used in many other places besides this area, which is low traffic and it's in front of a self-storage site. So I just wanted to throw that topic out there.
Well, that would, and I agree with you but that would give the city the discretion to use this funds for what it's necessary. But yet, if it ever comes necessary at this place, then it would be there for that as well, I'm sure.
Okay.
Am I right on that, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking too. But I think it's better to put it in there, and then they can always take it back out if they deem necessary with the Board of Aldermen. So
correct.
Go ahead, Mr. Costello. You made your, and Mr. Cullum, did you second that?
I just did. Sure. Yes.
And
Well,
and please do include the
Sidewalk.
sidewalk contribution as part of the conditions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, guys. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and do best box storage conditional use permit -72 by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Cullum with all the conditions that were stated. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
I got a question.
Yes.
How close is the buildings from from the road on AA? The actual buildings from AA.
Chris Wolf, are you still on? Can you answer that?
At the actual buildings, there's a 25-foot setback along AA. And you can see that the closest building we have is the northern building. And that's looks like 30 feet off. And then all the other additional buildings are farther than that. So it's not from the pavement, it's at 30 feet from the actual right of way. In this case, it looks like AA right of way is pretty wide in that area. It looks to be almost 80 feet wide. So from the edge of pavement to our first building is close to 50 feet.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Cooper?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, buddy. Any other questions or comments?
I like
The only
Mr. Deitch's
comment,
cat.
Go ahead.
I like Mr. Deitch's cat.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Durbin, did you have a question?
I don't really have a question. I just have a comment. I hope this is one of the last storage units that we approve, and I'm pretty sure we're going to approve it tonight. But we seem to be getting an awful lot of the storage units, and I think we should really look hard before we start approving any more. Just a comment, so ready for your vote.
And,
Okay, buddy.
I just want to say in response to that, that's a comment I think the Planning and Zoning Commission has kind of echoed over time. And even other self-storage owners have echoed over time. So we will take that back to staff and, see if there's some changes we need to make to the zoning code and to the comprehensive land use plan with regards to future self-storage. I think one of the things we're definitely going to do is make some modifications to keep it off of the retail corridor areas.
Very good. Good questions, guys. Good comments. Appreciate everyone. Entertain a motion. Oh, we just had a motion, so I'll entertain a vote. Melody? Roll call vote.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Durbin,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
No,
Mr. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mr. Deitch,
Yes.
Mr. Cullum.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1 with 2 absent. Move on to the best box storage site plan. 142. Mr. Costello to expedite.
All right, well, since we already approved with the conditional use with the conditions, I would make a motion that we recommend approval of the site plan and to include the same conditions for underground utilities, irrigation along Highway AA, architectural elevations to be submitted for approval by the Board of Aldermen, lighting to be placed in a manner to eliminate or reduce the overflow of that to the residential areas and to passing traffic, and to include the contribution to the sidewalk fund in lieu of the construction of sidewalks.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Entertain a second.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Deitch. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Durbin,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
yes,
Mr. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mr. Deitch,
Yes.
Mr. Cullum,
Yes.
Mr. Barton.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0 with 2 absent. And all those will come in front of the Board of Aldermen on what date?
December 15th.
December the 15th. Thank you. And before we let Chris go, thank you again, Chris and Matt. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate your time.
All right. And before we go on to the last thing, I'd like to say that I really like the way these new the order of business with the public hearings, and makes the second part of the meeting go much faster and much more concise. And I think we've done a good job with that. So appreciate everybody's support on that and cooperation. Let's move on to Appendix A, Permitted and Conditional Uses Amendment -114. You're the man. Right there, right down there.
All right, then.
This is like Hollywood. Hey, this is like Hollywood Squares. You remember that day?
Yeah.
You're the guy in the middle. You're the guy in the middle.
Not as entertaining. All right, I'll make a.
That's before my time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I will make a motion to recommend approval of the changes to Appendix A, permitted and conditional uses on ADM 114 as submitted by city staff.
I'll second it.
I heard Mr. Durbin over that. So Mr. Costello made a motion to approve the Appendix A permitted conditional uses ADM -114 that was submitted earlier tonight. Second by Mr. Durbin. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Cooper,
yes,
Mr. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mr. Deitch,
Yes.
Mr. Cullum,
Yes.
Mr. Barton,
Yes.
Mr. Durbin.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We'll officially close the meeting and ask anybody else that has anything for the good of the city.
I would like to echo Mr. Durbin's comments. I do think that putting some kind of limitation on how much more storage is necessary in the city at this time is a good idea. And I think that conversation's already going, but certainly encourage city staff and Board of Aldermen to look at that, as it's not really a revenue generator. It's simply a a type of business that serves existing and future residents. But we really, I think to preserve that commercial corridor along Interstate 70 for true commercial revenue generating businesses is in the best interest of everybody.
Yeah, and second that, I would be curious as to what the data is.
Well,
regarding-
that Jason, it's funny you said that. As we're talking about this, and I go back to one of the things I said at a previous meeting, we are planning, it is planning and zoning. So part of what happens is planning and zoning has absolute control without Board of Aldermen approval, what the comprehensive plan says. And I think one of the things for a future meeting, I don't know if we can have it ready by the next meeting, is I think we need to take a look and pin on a map all of the self-storage, how many self-storage units we have, what's our density, what's our capacity, talk to our contract planner and see if there's any data out there about, what kind of density you need for a population. And I think we can look at a couple of things. For example, no self-storage area within, I look at Highway 70, it's obviously popular because of the traffic. I get concerned about Highway 47 then, because I think, oh, we can't go here, we may go on 47. I know there's already some self-storage on 47. Look at some distance requirements between self-storages, and also some of our overlay areas, the retail corridors and areas, basically making them not allowed or conditional uses in those areas. So we can take that information, we can talk to our planner about it and look at some of the data and bring something back to you, because really, quite honestly, guys, is we try to make this planning and zoning process more fluid. And I think you guys see some of the results, including the reports, and really start implementing this comprehensive plan. We really want you guys to be planning. And when you say, hey, we may not want more self-storage, as Jason said, we want to look at the statistics and data. We need to bring that information back to you so you guys can make some recommendations for changes to the code to really make sure we don't become the mecca of self-storage.
Self-storage, right. Yeah, no, I mean, exactly what you just said, Mr. Graville. So I appreciate that, because, everybody can try to bring in the business, but if you're totally saturating the city with something that's not really functional, or it's way beyond the data that's showing its value added, then that gives justification to say, do we really need another one?
Nice comments, guys. Very good. Very well done. Anything else for the good of the group, guys? Mr. Deitch, you are up.
Move that we close the meeting.
Mr. Deitch makes a motion, and who seconds it?
Second.
Mr. Cooper seconded it, and all in favor say aye.
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 Happy holidays, guys.
Hey,
Merry Christmas.
Merry
You too.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Good job,
everyone.
guys. You
Happy
bet.
holidays.
Bye-bye.